Hey, welcome everyone, this is Snoo, and today I want to introduce you to my official patch 3.22 Trial of the Ancestors League starter, which is Poisonous Concoction. Now, I teased this build in a little teaser video a couple days ago, which was seen by my community, of course, was received rather well by them, but apparently that video was seen by a few too many people who were completely outside of my community, totally unaware of how I do things around here, how I'm typically quite data-driven and presenting information thoroughly, high value, looking at the numbers, yada yada. And I think some people mistook that video for an actual build guide. It was definitely not a build guide. It even came out prior to the patch notes. I was simply there to tease it. Now, I did go so far as to provide the POB, which was meant as a kind of gift to people who really wanted to see what I was up to, so you kind of get a head start understanding, maybe practicing and wrapping your head around what I was doing. What you're watching now is the official build guide, so this is the one I want you to pay close attention to. Please pull up a chair, take some notes if you'd like. This video is going to be jam-packed full of value. It's going to be kind of long, but that's how it goes. We're going to be talking about the genesis of the build, why I chose Poisonous Concoction. There's a little bit of a story there. We'll be going over a map showcase where I discuss some things in-game, in real-time playing. I know everybody loves that. We'll be talking about the gems, and we'll go over the gear. And of course, we'll be looking at the POB, and yes, the configurations, the calculations, all of that stuff, looking at it in full. All for you. So, let's get started. It's going to be a great video. Here we go. Where did the Poisonous Concoction come from? Well, it was my leveling build for Poison Tornado Shot last league, and Poisonous Concoction was a build that I kind of league started prior to that. So I knew it was quite strong. And then it got changed and kind of nerfed last league, and people have written it off. And I even presented the question last league, is Poisonous Concoction dead? I wasn't 100% sure I should start that as a leveling portion of my Poison Tornado Shot build. But I went ahead and did it anyway, and it went very well. In fact, it went so well, I couldn't believe how strong it was when I got into deep red maps, when I included things like Dying Sun into the build. I was absolutely shook at how incredibly strong the clear was in maps, especially low investment strategy, and it absolutely synergizes with exactly how I want to kick things off this league and farm with a kind of zero investment Exarch altar farming strategy. I'll get into more detail about that. I'm planning to farm up a Mage Blood really fast this league, and I'm not going to have to invest hardly anything to do it, so that should excite some of you. This build is, while being probably a fair bit cheaper than any other build to set up, don't really want to give a price tag to things, but yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that as we continue on through the league start. I will say that this is a very solid build, and it's going to be a lot easier to play than most of my other previous builds. Quite often I make builds that are not so easy to play, not so easy to understand. And that's part of the reason why I actually teased the build, because I had faith in my community that, you know, they would be able to pretty well understand this build quite well. Anyway, that is where we started. So I now have experience with Poisonous Concoction pre-nerf and post-nerf, and have had a chance to refine and look at the POB twice over, spent countless hours on it, and this is basically the best thing I can come up with for you guys. All right, so let's get into it. We have, unfortunately, a very ugly character on the screen, admittedly. Feel free to use MTX. Kind of recommend it, but for the sake of a showcase, I'm not going to do that for you. All right, there she is. Got poison all over the place. You can see some of the skills I'm using. You can see the flasks are going off automatically already. That's because the Ascendancy gives me flask per second passively. I'm going to showcase a beach map. Beach was one of the maps I was running a lot early this league. I did purposely roll this for the sake of the showcase to be fairly non-dangerous. No major map mods in here that would highly impact how it plays. Although I will say this build should be able to play any map mod except for Physical Reflect, and that is because we're using Shield Charge. Well, I suppose you could use Physical Reflect and simply not Shield Charge in that map. So you could clear it, it'd just be a bit slower. This is going to be mimicking my zero investment strategy with only 6 favorited slots, Wandering Path, Singular Focus, a little bit of good stuff on Heist. I know the Atlas passive tree is going to be changing in a major way next league. We'll make some separate videos talking about my plans for that. But here it is. This is a level 100 character set to level 95 with 5 passives remaining. 8 Atlas passes remaining because the Atlas is not 100% unlocked, as to mimic exactly what I plan to do starting next league. So let's get into it. A couple things I want you to pay close attention to. I want you to pay close attention to the one divine flask that I'm running. Am I sustaining flask charges? Very important. Many people think that I'm not. I want you to take note that I have 10 projectiles and 12 with Dying Sun. Might kind of blow your mind, the thought of actually getting 12. You can see they are squeezed fairly close together. Okay, the flasks are a huge part of this build, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of scroll over them so you can kind of get a sense of what's going on here. Now, shield charge means I don't really need to kill anything, just rush the boss. And that's what I normally do on a map like this. I want to rush the boss. And, oh, I didn't even know the boss was very angry. No problem. So, you should also probably pay attention to how much damage I'm taking, right? I don't really want to stand in that muck of that there. Awakened Sextants is always good. Oh, we got an Essence. That's good. We got some beasts in here. We can kind of showcase pretty well the defensive side. That was a lot of damage I could have been taking there. And I would normally loot, but I'm going to actually skip that for this showcase here because I just kind of want to be able to focus on what's going on. There's the life flask down there. You see me not actually actively dodging everything. I definitely am taking some hits to the face by some pretty hard monsters here, even though this is just an alch and go, admittedly. This is just an alch go. We're not doing like Legion and all kinds of crazy stuff there. But, yeah, this map could have spawned much easier than it did, most notably. You can see we got temp chains on hit. Thanks to Asena's Gentle Touch, we got some explode. In my opinion, this is a pretty dang strong build as far as clearing, especially alch and go. It would be pretty good at a wide variety of mechanics, anything that spawns monsters really close together. The one thing it's not particularly good at is Legion, because monsters are not close enough together to really take advantage of the explosion range. Okay. There's a little map showcase for you. Now, I know for a fact that I'm going to get people, even with that showcase right there, I'm going to get a lot of people who are going to perhaps not complain, but are going to critique the notion of using 12 projectiles per cast on a fast attacking build with only one divine flask. And I think there's no way you can possibly sustain that. So this is something I've done before. I'm going to do it once again for the official video. We're going to take a little bit of extra time and run one more map, or at least half a map. And I'm going to show you just how much it doesn't matter that you have full life charges to use when using this build. It is not mandatory, and I'm going to show you with irrefutable proof right now. So, you probably notice that stuff is dying pretty fast still. What about this Essence monster? Is it going to die pretty fast? Yeah, pretty fast. Ooh, Brutal Shrine. I'm even stronger now. Cheating a little bit. The boss. Is he still dying? Is he taking 12 projectiles at once? Oh, probably. You'd assume he's probably doing it. Okay, I wasn't sure if I was going to clear this whole map, but I mean, I don't know. Might as well, because it's pretty easy. You'll have to forgive me for making the video a little extra long. I hope you can appreciate what I just did there for you. So any sort of critiques or what have you about Poisonous Concoction being unplayable because you cannot maintain life flask charges, I just ran that whole map, probably at least 90% at the speed I would have, with no life flask. Which means I was doing, compared to a perfectly rolled life flask like this, I was doing roughly 40% less damage with Poisonous Concoction. So this is kind of one of those things we say, if you're doing an effing ton of damage, and then you're doing 40% less damage, you're still doing a ton of damage. That's basically what's going on here. Now, map showcase is finished. We are going to talk about the gear. Let's start with, I think I'll save the rares for last. Got probably the most expensive item on the list right here. So if you want to know how much this build costs, just know this item here probably going to be the most expensive one at League Start, especially very early in the league. We're looking at Death Rush, especially for a 3-second Death Rush. Now, I suppose a 2-second Death Rush will be much more moderately priced. But this is how we're getting Adrenaline in the build. Technically, we do get Adrenaline in the build. Throwing down War Banner with a high count size, that only lasts about 1.5 seconds, though. I do like using the War Banner trick on the map boss, though. And Beyond Boss, Delirium Boss, things like that. So I still like having it, and actually, I do need War Banner to be accuracy capped. So that's another good reason to use it. So that's kind of everything there is to say about Adrenaline. That's where Adrenaline's coming from. You would have noticed that it had well over 50% uptime during a map clear. The other ring we have is Circle of Nostalgia. Also going to be a little bit hard to get on day one, but still fairly cheap. You're going to want Chaos Damage and Chaos Resistance while affected by Herald of Agony, preferably at least the Chaos Damage one. You can Catalyst this up very nice for a lot of extra damage. Don't worry too much about the synthesis mods. It can be whatever, but you can see that I did actually get some couple valuable synthesis mods. This would not have been a terribly expensive ring, even at League Start. Okay, I guess we'll move on to the next jewelry slot. We get endurance charges into the build with Aggressive Bastion, 10% chance on kill for an endurance charge, and you get a whole lot of extra power with poison or through the charges like Frenzy and power charges. I don't really care about power charges, don't care about critting in this build, but since I'm going to get a 9% increased poison duration with 3 power charges, kind of nice. Definitely using this a lot for the Frenzy charges. This enables me to not have to use Blood Rage, which is kind of nice. On a League Starter especially, if you've ever played League Starter with Blood Rage, mapping with Blood Rage, always kind of annoying when it comes to like trying to loot, and the second you stop attacking things, usually it's a bit problematic unless you're playing with super high regeneration, but we are using Ghost Dance, which we'll get into when we're looking at the skills and everything later on. Let's move to the shield. We got Leper's Alms here. This is a fantastic shield for this build. 40% increased duration of ailments on enemies. That's loading up a whole bunch of extra poison damage because poison damage does stack. The dot damage that does stack has a lot of evasion rating, a little bit of energy shield, and shared suffering, which what shared suffering does is whenever I'm affected by elemental ailments, the monster or entity that affected me is then given the ailment back whenever I hit them with anything. Now, that has some weird ramifications with chilled ground, shocked ground, a little bit harder to deal with there. So on shocked ground, I hit an enemy while I'm shocked, they all become shocked. So enemies actually do receive elemental ailments from me, even though I'm pure poison damage and I cannot otherwise put elemental ailments on. It's of course not reliable, but it is a workaround for not having to use Purity of Elements or some other means to, negate elemental ailments. We're running a Zenith Gentle Touch. Moderately priced item, fairly cheap early on. This unique is giving me a huge amount of power by giving Temp Chains and an Explode. Though the combination of those two things is crazy strong. Do keep in mind that between the time of me recording this video and the League Start, Temp Chains will have been nerfed a fair bit. Temp Chains was making ailments last 40% longer. Now it's 25% longer, so it's receiving a nerf. My damage in full will go down around 20-25% for that. But in a practical sense, during actual mapping, not really going to have that much of an impact. We're going to be running Carcass Jack, and the reason for Carcass Jack is mainly for the increased area of effect, because I've decided to make a build that has 12 projectiles with Dying Sun up. Got to have crazy amount of AoE, and if we want any chance of getting 12 projectiles to overlap, that's what we're going to do. We're going to be talking more about that later when we look into the PoB, because I know that's a big point of contention, the overlap. That is it for the uniques. Let's go to the belt. Now, the belt, you need to fill out a little bit on the resistances and strength. You can figure out how to do that. Will have showcased in this video and then in the PoB a method to get your resistances and attributes figured out. But at any rate, I definitely recommend Life, and the very important mod here will be the Fractured mod. In this case, doesn't have to be fractured, but it needs to be there. Probably should be there. A top tier reduced flash charges used. That is a tier 1 roll. It still has a weighting of 1,000. Not that hard to hit. It's the same difficulty to hit that mod as it is to hit tier 1 life, or close to it. There are more suffixes in the pool, but yeah, you get the idea. Let's see. We'll move on to the helmet. Now, the implicits are going to be a little tough to get, but, you know, we're going to be farming Eldritch currencies anyway, so it should be pretty easy. Again, a lot of resistances, some life, and that's it. That's it. If you get a very, very well-rolled amulet and get everything figured out, and you have an opportunity, you should definitely benchcraft AoE, +1 gems, up to 10% AoE would be nice for this build. AoE is not just for Poisonous Concoction, it will count for the Explode as well as Plague Bearer, which we're using. So AoE is a huge deal. Maximizing that has an enormous impact on the overall power of this build. Then we got the boots. Of course, we want movement speed, we want life, and we want to fill out the resistances. You want action speed, probably. And poisons deal damage faster. I think it was the best mod in there to choose. So, yeah. There you go. That is it for the gear. As far as the flasks, the secret sauce to the concoction builds post-nerf is the Overflowing Chalice. This is incredible for Pathfinder, who's already getting flasks passively, getting a huge amount of flasks on killing enemies. In terms of mapping, this makes it so basically flasks never empty and they stay full, topped off, even Dying Sun. Stays topped off. Even Dying Sun, if I'm using Explosive Concoction, honestly, is staying topped off with this. It's incredible. It also does flat percent damage, which is increasing poison damage. Very nice flask, surprisingly strong for this build. We got the combination Quicksilver and Onslaught for a whole bunch of extra speed. Yes, Shield Charge is impacted by movement speed as well as cast speed, so it's very nice. Even faster movement speed with Shield Charge and all that with the flasks up. Went ahead and did the increased effect and reduced effect of curses. Is nice. This is around 80% reduced effect of curses after all calculations are figured out. We do not have a zero cost Poisonous Concoction, but we do have it driven down pretty hard. One of the ways is with the implicit in the helmet. Another way is with this flask, reducing the cost of mana tremendously. So a very fast casting build with only 61 mana pool is going to require a lot of reduction in mana costs. So that is very nice. Then we have Dying Sun, which I think I mentioned in the beginning. Dying Sun surprised me in just how incredibly strong it was last league when I added it in. It was completely off my radar at the time, but the increased area of effect was huge, and the additional 2 projectiles was huge. And I was already throwing 12 projectiles at once, even back then, without Carcass Jack. Admittedly, probably not overlapping without Carcass Jack, but you get the idea. Extra fire res, really nice. We also got Divine Flask. Saturated Divine Flask of Sealing. This is actually pretty easy to get. This is a perfect roll in the prefix. You do want as high as possible. Recommend Alteration Spam for that. And an Empty Suffix and Beastcraft, the Corrupted Blood immunity. I am not immune to Corrupted Blood in any way, shape, or form, I believe. Per the build guide, in the notes section, it will say Soul of Ralakash down here. However, if you're farming Exarch Altars, you do want Soul of Aberath there. Soul of Brine King, for the record. There, because even though Shared Suffering is throwing those elemental elements out, you don't want to get frozen ever. So that's why we go with that. Okay, that is it for the gear. Now it's time for the gems. We'll start with the 6th link. We got Poisonous Concoction. All of the gems for this build guy are 20, level 20 quality. Yeah, it'll take a little while to get there, but I figured I'd go ahead and set the guide up in that way. I do also have in the POB, we'll be looking at the more leveling portion with like level 18-0 gems as well. Got Greater Volley and Greater Multiple Projectile support because I believe we're getting a huge amount of overlap, probably all 12. Unbound Ailments supports the next best gem. Void Manipulation supports the next best gem. And then you have a choice here. You can either run Deadly Ailments or Vicious Projectiles. Probably. Or maybe damage on full life if you really want to. With that mastery, you could do that. I don't really see a reason why not to run Deadly Ailments. Quite often you avoid Deadly Ailments because you need some more hit damage. I'm actually not using any leech in this build. We have a little bit of life on hit. Got a ton of life from the flask, of course, constantly. But I went ahead and went Deadly Ailments. It is the most damage if you don't really care about the hit damage. So, your choice. You can pick whatever gem you want there. This does create the most damage, I believe. We got some auras. We got War Banner, Grace, which I was running Malevolence, and Malevolence is still an option. And then Herald of Agony. Herald of Agony is the other one, as well as Haste. So we got two 50% auras, a 25%, and a 10%. That's what we're working with. Herald of Agony is going to be connected to Culling Strike, as well as Ancestral Protector. That's giving us some increased AoE, and then of course much increased damage. They have Culling Strike, so Culling Strike is quasi in the build. Won't be effective a whole bunch of the time. It will be effective on bosses, I believe, especially with Ancestral Protector, but at any rate, let's move on. I got one of my favorite 4 links here. We got Val Haste, where I'm using Haste and Val Haste, and then increased duration support for that. Increased duration support also increasing Immortal Call duration with cast and damage taken. Low end on the Immortal Call, so it can trigger quite easily when I take damage. You will have seen it, probably will have seen it going up in that video. Shield Charge. Already talked about War Banner. Shield Charge is incredible for this build. I want you to pay close attention. I'm actually going to make a separate video on a major interaction or tech, if you will, that I found literally last night. Shield Charge connects to faster attack support. No surprise there. Everybody loves faster attack support. Now, if you know how important faster attack support is, you might want to take a look at momentum support. Because momentum support gives you a baby faster attacks. But here's the thing. In the event that you're like moving around a lot and you don't move, you're going to be giving yourself movement speed. Pretty amazing. So if you have the extra link to spare, you might want to be using life tap support, but I don't think you need to. Momentum support for me. Again, we'll be making a separate video on that. Look forward to that. It's pretty huge epiphany I have. I'm not the first person to do it. There are some PoE Ninja profiles out there, but it's definitely flying under everybody's radar. So there's a little taste of some new tech that I'm presenting this league. I believe that is all for the gems, except for, oh yeah, the quintessential 3 link that everybody who does poison and runs Plaguebearer would do. Plaguebearer is adding a whole bunch of extra damage in the maps. It's not calculated in the POB, can't be in any way, shape, or form, but Withering Step, Plaguebearer, and increased area of effect. The amount of area of effect being given to Plaguebearer on this build is so outrageous, you will not even believe how ridiculous Plaguebearer gets to its AoE. But anyway, we got a few extra gems here. I've been playing around. Yeah, you know, playing around with some things, maybe. But yeah, we'll talk about this stuff later. This is the League Start gear setup. All right. And now we'll do the skills. Of course, we have the Pathfinder. We're going to be starting with Nature's Reprisal, incredibly strong with Wither, and then probably going to go Nature's Adrenaline. Then after that, I'll go Master Toxicist, followed by Master Surgeon. Master Surgeon or Nature's Boon, depending on your pick. I like being able to, if I'm already going to have a super insanely strong Divine Life Flask, might as well go Master Surgeon as well, just so it is constantly up. This is way more life recovery than a vitality gem. We'll just put it that way. You can see it for yourself in the POB if you'd like. Start around here at the bottom, and then you can see fill things out. And the POB will have a leveling portion, but I start off down here. We go ahead and take... I'm actually just going to kind of explain this in segments here. We'll look at the damage first. We got, I believe, 1, 2, 3 major poison damage wheels. This is part of the reason why poison scales so incredibly strong. With the Ranger, you're going to take all 3 of those. We do need some accuracy. We're going to get a little bit extra there. Do need a little bit on resistances, so here's where the accuracy is coming from. Again, a little bit from the banner. Of course, we're going to take a little bit of life. I went ahead and got skills cost less life. I do think it feels a little more comfy that way. It doesn't really affect the life recovery at all. It just makes the skills cost a little bit less. And you can see that it costs 11 mana. Poisonous Concoction costs 11 mana. Without this, it's going to cost 17 mana. That is a big difference. The difference between 11 and 17 is big when you're spamming skills. So that is why I like to have that. But that is not necessarily a mandatory point. We do have an extra projectile here. Very underrated attack mastery here. You might have noticed that I was surrounded by, like, I don't know, 50 enemies in terms of close proximity. I believe close range is actually extended by your own personal AoE. Don't quote me on that. But that could be incredibly strong. So that's where the one extra projectile comes from. 4 more from Volley, 4 more from GMP, and 2 more from Dying Sun. Oh yeah, other life nodes here. So we are taking every single available life wheel that we can, at least in terms of notables, except for this one. Would like to get Revenge of the Hunter. Just couldn't figure out a way to get there, even taking Blood's Siphon up there. Do have some life on hit, but no leech. You could take leech if you really want to, but it probably won't run deadly ailments if you do. We do have some interesting things with shield down here. Even more chance to get an endurance charge, at least if you're facing off against the boss. At least you have some chance getting endurance charge. Some nice defensive notes here. A lot of damage and defense and retaliation, and a whole bunch of extra damage and dirty techniques, damage over time down there. All of the spell suppression you need. This is spell suppress capped so long as you are phasing, which you will be phasing if you've suppressed any damage, or 20% chance on kill. A little bit of extra movement going on over here. And of course, we got the lovely flask mods. I'm not taking natural remedies. Don't really seem to need to go down there. But yes, replenishing remedies, definitely. And careful conservationist to reduce the flask charge usage. Very strong there. Did need a little help with the mana reservation. And we went ahead and we took Ghost Dance. Now, Ghost Dance is an interesting choice here. I'll talk about it in a second. One more thing. Yeah, the other reservation things, so a couple of the reservations, and then also a little bit of extra chaos damage. Probably not super necessary, this mastery, but I like to go ahead and take it. It's a nice feel-good mastery. It can help increase your actual damage as you're going on. In some cases, you may not have enough points for attributes. You can just take one of these 2 points here to make up for that. No other keystones. The only one is Ghost Dance. Now, why are we doing Ghost Dance? There are actually a couple different variations of this build I like to do. I like one with Malevolence. So if I feel tanky enough, maybe I run Malevolence, which means I don't run Ghost Dance. And yeah, we'll look at some of that stuff in the PoB. But in this case, what I'm presenting you today is the much more tankier version. Not saying it's unkillable, but it's way more tanky than the version that I showed in the teaser, in the PoB and the teaser. So they are different. I do want to clarify that here. But yeah, this is running Grace with Ghost Dance. And we do have a 788 energy shield, and whenever Ghost Dance procs, we get around 600, over 600. So it's very nice, very comfortable there. We get almost our full energy shield back. Though it is kind of acting like an extra 600 or 700 life. Effectively, we're not getting hit very often. We'll take a look more into that in the PoB. But Ghost Dance, big winner in my book. Also another reason why not to run Blood Rage. You can't with Ghost Dance. That's one of the reasons running Malagaro's Cruelty, this one Chaos Amulet. Is pretty incredible when all things considered when you tie that all together. Oh yeah, a couple of Frenzy Charges. Almost missed that. Frenzy Charges even better than normal because of this amulet. There are no jewels in this build, you have noticed. Yes, I just presented a build that features 0 jewels. You're welcome. It's always hard to replicate jewels, and I wanted to have a build that didn't feature jewels. Like I said, a little bit more newer player friendly. You don't need jewels for this build. But yes, jewels are incredibly strong. Pay attention close to the market on especially Viridian basic jewels that feature 3 or 4 very strong mods. There are things like increased poison duration, chaos.multi, increased damage, increased chaos damage, as well as some stats and things. Jewels definitely are worth taking for 2 points here, or 2 points here, or 2 points here. Easy access to jewels. Could even get another max frenzy there. Okay. That's it for the skills. We've gone over the gems, we've gone over the gear, we've gone over the skills. The only thing left is my favorite. All right, you know what this is. PoB time. Okay, we got it all here. It's all set up there. I already talked over the skills. I don't need to do that anymore. I know you want me to go straight to the calculations, right? 12 projectiles, 15 million damage. What's going on here? What's going on here? Well, let's get some of the calculations out of the way first. We got a radius of 24. Okay, that may not mean anything to you. Trust me, that's effing big. That is effing big. That is an 80% AoE, increased AoE breakpoint that is hit to do that. Now, I believe that we're probably actually getting 12 projectiles to overlap with a radius of 24. The reason I say that is because I have been trying to research some of this. Admittedly, I did not do my own testing, so I cannot say with absolute certainty. But I did see some test results from the people who were doing things. This was one of the better ones, I thought. Somebody tested with 0% AoE, AoE radius of 18. Again, we're comparing 24 to 18. You get a little bit of AoE, you get a radius of 19. You get a little bit of overlap there. Maybe 20 gives you quite a bit of overlap, 5 or so. 21, you're looking at a full 9 overlap plus. So 22 presumably would get based on the bell curve action that I see here, if you look at the math, presumably an AoE radius of 22, 23 would probably start overlapping 12, 24, I mean, most definitely. That's got to be. Now, I could be wrong, but at the end of the day, I didn't test it because I don't believe there's any major reason to test it because this build is for mapping. It's not for bossing. So when you're mapping, the goal, it isn't a matter of whether or not you're overlapping 12 times on one enemy and when you're in maps. It's a matter of when you throw a projectile, how likely is it to hit literally everything on the screen? How likely is the screen to just evaporate at the click of a button? That's the question you need to ask when you're mapping. You don't even need to aim, you just shoot, fire, everything dies. This build does that pretty well. Does it do it as well as Tornado Shot? No, it doesn't. But it does it pretty dang well. So that is my reasoning, shall we say, for not going ultra deep into the math and the testing and stuff. I think it's going to be quite all right. And I do believe, honestly, I believe 12 projectiles is indeed happening with this. We have a mana cost of 12, life cost of 13. You will have noticed that the life didn't, I mean, the life flask was keeping the life totally fine anyway. For the record, that doesn't drain your life anywhere near as fast as Blood Rage would. We also got 125% chance to poison, I believe. Very good to have a little bit more in case you get a 50% reduced chance on as a map mod. 475% increase, 251% more, and a whole bunch of multi, I guess 192 dot multi. And yeah, that's where these numbers, scaling is just through the roof there. 97% chance to hit against a Pinnacle boss. This is currently set up for Pinnacle boss, because apparently that's the way people like it now. 198% increased attack speed. And yeah, so a lot of stuff there. 46% effective hit pool, 46,000. Physical damage is a little bit low. Chaos damage a little low, not so important. But we do have a Mortal Call in play, so that is pretty nice. I don't really know if that's taking into account. I do not believe any of this takes into account Ghost Dance, sadly. So you can see the effective hit pool does not change when you put Ghost Dance on there. So that is absolutely going to make it higher than it would otherwise be. In my opinion, certainly the way I play, this build is tanky enough. This is the tankiest League starter that I've made, for sure. The way it's set up currently right this second. Now, there are ways to boost the damage more. I'm going to show you now a slight change in the variation that would boost the damage. I remove all the points there. I get the mana reservation down here. Instead, I would go in and undo Grace and then click in Malevolence. Add Blood Rage. I guess in that case I would drop Momentum. And voila, we have a whole bunch of extra damage. And this might be the one you play, the way you want to play. This is probably actually going to be the way I play in maps. It might be. I'm not exactly sure, sold on which one I'm going to play. It depends on how things feel. This will definitely be a little bit rippier, but you can see we got about 25% more damage. Almost 25% more damage just doing those few small changes. Oh yeah, almost forgot. Almost forgot a few very important points there. There we go. So 25, 26, 27% more damage, somewhere in there. Okay, now let's finish things out with the config file. You'll notice that I have configured things rather favorably for me. Prior in the teaser, I did actually have the standard boss set up. The teaser said 24 million DPS Poisonous Concoction build. This is the way the parameters are set up. So I'm pulling you back down here. We're going to actually go through this. I have since learned that people like using Guardian Pinnacle bosses for their setup, even though this is a mapping character. Fine, go ahead and put it on Guardian Pinnacle boss. It doesn't make much difference anyway. Withering stacks at 15. I get withered on touch, but you can see when there's no wither in the target, it doesn't hit nearly as hard. But gonna have 15 virtually all the time anyway. Have I killed recently? I guess it doesn't matter. I mean, I put that there because I always have killed recently. That's not going to change anything. No elemental ailments going on. No covered in frost, ash, crushed, intimidated, nothing, shocked, nothing there. However, there is something in here that I did not plug in. That is the attack mastery. Now, this is truly active a lot. Honestly, I probably should put 1 in here. Number of enemies. Really should put 1, because even if you're facing a boss, this would be true of 1. So you can see it does actually increase it there. But when you're mapping, you can see the damage goes up a lot in actual mapping, how many enemies you're surrounded by. Goes up there. I'm going to move it up to 1 because actually legitimately it would be 1. Would normally be standing very close. Okay, we're at Pathfinder. We don't have any sort of tailwind, no forbidden flesh shields, anything like that. We do have onslaught from the silver flask. We got endurance charges from aggressive bastion anoint, as well as chance to block. Forensic charges from the amulet. Power charges from the amulet. Flask's always active. Adrenaline is coming from this ring. Far be it from me to unselect adrenaline if I choose to use Death Rush as a ring, because there's no way I would not run. There's no way I would not select Death Rush as a ring if I wasn't running adrenaline. So that is where some of those numbers come from. And of course, 12 projectiles overlapping, which is done right here. You can reduce the count if you'd like. You can see that it does count. To me, it is not proper to suggest it's only getting 7 or 8. Against a boss, I don't know, maybe not 12. Well, against a boss it would be 10 actually, because Dying Sun would not be up very often. So let's go ahead, just for the sake of absolute utmost transparency, we're going to rig this build so that you'll see what it would do against a boss. That silver flask is going to be up a lot with the massive amount of passive regen. I don't really see a reason not to leave that up there. Endurance charges are going to be tough to come by, however. These are gone as well with no on-kill abilities. Close range, 1 enemy. Okay, fine. Wither stacks are still going to be there. And yeah. Even without Dying Sun, we have AoE radius of 22. According to that other math, 21 was 9 projectiles comfortably. I'm going to assume 22, it can do 10 projectiles. Still showing up at 13 million DPS against bosses. Now that does assume that you're actually standing still, firing away constantly, which is unrealistic. You're not going to be able to do that in a boss. So yeah, of course, actually running the boss, doing the boss mechanic, you're not going to do 13 million. But hopefully you can understand that if you are familiar with my previous League starters, 13 million, even on paper, is really high for boss DPS compared to any one of my other previous League starters. I don't believe I've forgotten anything here. I could be mistaken. We do have Plague Bearer as well. By the way, Plague Bearer is configured for the infecting. You've got incubating down there. It does go a little lower, but it will be infecting most of the time if you're using it properly. Here's something you might not have known. I unselect Plague Bearer, my damage doesn't go down. That's because PoE does not calculate Plague Bearer damage in. Plague Bearer does quite a bit of damage in maps. Some people say it does most of the damage in maps. I don't think it does in this build. But given the fact that Plague Bearer is not even included in these numbers should say a lot to you. The more realistic damage is probably closer to almost 20 million, I would imagine. Maybe not quite that move. Maybe it's like 16 million or so. 17 million. But with Plague Bearer, it's certainly even higher. There. Against an Uber boss, of course, it's going to be a lot lower, a lot harder. Now, I never recommend my builds for bosses, but I will say this build is absolutely capable of doing bosses, more than capable enough of do. Oh, I remember. There's one thing I should probably do here. Okay, we're gonna say no flask. I'm sorry. Yeah, no flask. Okay, so on bosses, the flask would have maybe 30% uptime. But for the sake, you know, of being as conservative as possible, we'll say flask is down. Okay, 8 million. There it is, 8 million. Hopefully I remembered everything. I think this is pretty close to about as accurate as you can get for how much damage you would be doing on a boss fight, a pinnacle boss fight. Somewhere around 8 million. That is, of course, insofar as assuming that you're able to just stand there and fire away, which you will not be able to on any build, pretty much. That concludes all of the PoE action. I think we are basically going to leave it there. Final thoughts on this is dang good build. I'm very excited to try it. I do want to tease One more thing, however, for those of you who waited this long. I am like 98% committed to doing this league starter. In my back pocket, I have 2 more build guides that I plan to release, at least in lesser quality fashion. For Explosive Concoction, an Explosive Concoction Pathfinder, and an Explosive Concoction Elementalist of some type. They're not quite finished. The Pathfinder is basically finished. I've already been showcasing it on Twitch. You should go over to Twitch, watch me live there. I will be playing all kinds of PoE sort of leveling practicing endgame, early in-game stuff. On there, you can catch me there. So I look forward to seeing you there. But yeah, I did want to just kind of tease that for you. So any of you who really despise doing meta things, you might want to be on the lookout for the Explosive Concoction builds, which that is definitely considered a dead skill this league. But alas, it is not dead, as I've already proven in some of the live streams recently. It is, however, inferior to this one. This is absolutely going to be the best of the 3 that I'm going to present. Poisonous Concoction Pathfinder is the best of the 3. Very solid league start builder. A+ in my book. Maybe it's not the absolute best one out there, but it's really top tier. Can still function really well at the early end game. We got some notes here. You can read about this. I'm not going to go over this in here, but you can read it. Please check for potential updates that might take place. Just so you know how to operate things, there is a leveling portion down here. You start here, and then you can move it around. It is going to guide you all the way. This is a full-blown, full-fledged leveling build guide tied in with the early endgame section. I have parsed off a separate set of items or different set of gems, and then different set of gear with a very, very strong set of 1 to 2 chaos uniques here with 4 different rares that you can kind of outfit yourself to get your resistances capped, and some nice, pretty easygoing flasks here to get you started. It's gonna be good. Let me know what you think of the build guide if you're excited to try this. And then other than that, I'll see you in the next video. It's gonna be a good one with that momentum gem. It's coming to you soon. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye for now.